I finally gave that up to somebody else. And that was so freeing. I was like, oh my God, it's a whole new world.
Hey guys, Mike here from Sell Your Service. I am with Charlie Harper from Whoosh Agency. How you doing, Charlie?
Good, man. Good to be here.
Thanks for jumping on board. You're inside Seven Figure Freedom, and you and I were talking about how there was a couple of things inside the program that have really worked for you. But before we get into that, tell us a little bit about your agency and specifically the market that you work with as well, because you've got quite a specific one.
The niche that my agency primarily works with is our law firms. I actually, in my past, worked at a law firm for a year, and I had a lot of experience with lawyers and that sort of thing. It made me more comfortable to talk with them and everything.
How long have you been working with law firms?
Since I think about 2016, I've been working with law firms, and as we produce for one, another one come along, a lot of referrals, a lot of the word of mouth. Law firms would share me as a recommendation in a Facebook group or something like that. We'd have a conversation, sign them on and help them out.
Awesome, man. Yeah. So one of the things that we both kind of talk about in chats whenever we catch up with each other is the number of people who shy away from selling. I think that's something that you and I have kind of connected over is there's not a lot of problems you can solve in your business that can't be solved with a better sales process, right?
That's right.
Especially for agencies. Why do you think agencies shy away from just sales in general?
Well, I think HubSpot's partly responsible for this, but this inbound marketing is great. It works 100%. I'm not saying it doesn't, right? But I think you can't remove the human interaction aspect out of things completely. When you're dealing with law firms and high ticket sales and long-term relationships and things like that, especially with law firms and other companies that have been burned in the past, they're going to want to talk to somebody. And when you're in a room full of lawyers, having to convince them that you're the person that's going to solve their problem, you better have your sales chops down. You need to be able to communicate, fire off reasonable answers quickly, understand how to lead them towards your solution and things like that.
It's not even like you say, inbound's great, and it is, but even then, like the world's best inbound marketing or sales process still needs you to have a sales process at some point.
The selling never stops because selling is inside of the reporting. Selling is in upselling and cross-selling. Selling never stops. To keep the clients happy and things like that, you got to continue your sales. It's nothing that goes away. Even if you brought in a lead inbound, now you have them. Now you have to communicate with them, right? Yeah. Like if you suck at sales, you're fucked. Yeah, all of a sudden the serious questions start dropping. You've got this nice, neat little packaged productized service over here that not every square client is going to fit in that round hole, or however you say that.
I see this so many times with clients for our agency as well. Is they're like, oh, we need more leads, we need more leads, we need more leads. I'll look at it. I'm like, you don't need more leads at all. Your sales process is atrocious. You're not doing anything with the leads you're getting. Mm-hmm. The funny thing is, marketing agencies always come to me with that. They're like, where do I find more leads? My first question is, talk to me about your sales process, because that will tell me whether you do or don't really need more leads.
Yeah, things break down. I see this in law firms, especially the person answering the call. It might be a paralegal, not the lawyer themselves, depending on the size of the law firm, front office staff. It can really break down if that chain of communication all the way through the organization isn't there. The other thing too, though, about helping clients with sales, and I guess this kind of ties in with niching, which is one of the big topics inside of your program that we talk about, is when you niche, one of the things that niching wise, not anybody talks about in regards to sales or anything like that, is that when you become comfortable inside of an industry, and you start learning about that industry, you start learning about their operations. When you understand how they operate, you can actually, and you start marketing for them, you can start coaching them on how to convert sales and things like that, because you understand the softwares they're using, you're understanding their process on intake and things like that. For example, for law firms, the intake process for traffic tickets may be completely different from estate planning and probate. And so sales process inside of your client, if you're niching and you understand their organization, can be completely different because you understand those different facets and you treat every practice area inside the organization as its own business. Yeah. When you're treating it like that, then that business has its sales process, and then you connect marketing to that. Basically, they all have their own funnels, their own lead magnets, their own inbound treatments, but then they also have their own questions and follow-ups and things like that.
It's interesting you talk about the niche being so important in that. This is why I go on about it so often. You came into the program pretty much with that already, certainly in mind. We'll kind of talk about some of the other things that you've been working on, but when you have a better understanding of who you're trying to market to, everything else falls into place. It's infinitely easier than trying to catch 100 different animals.
It's like speaking Klingon. Right.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
It's like, I don't know if you ever seen Men in Black, Men in Black, the first Men in Black, and they're looking for that cat. The galaxy is on the little, that's what a niche is. Like, you think it's just like, oh my God, I'm going to choose a niche and my company's going to die. But when you realize there's an entire galaxy in that little necklace of opportunity and more things and bigger things than you ever thought of, it helps you speak a language. It helps you be able to, in sales, be able to answer to objections more easily. There's countless times to where I'm talking to a new prospect, whether they're in Texas or North Carolina, wherever. I tell them during the call, like, what my other law firms are doing. When they're saying they're trying to increase sales, knowing questions like, well, are your practice areas focused on practice areas where your paralegals can bill, where you're not the sole person billing? Can your paralegals bill for their time too? Why aren't you focusing on those legal service areas, those practice areas more, to free you up a little bit, but still have revenue coming in from the paralegal work? It's like a cross-pollination that once you start working with whoever your industry is, you start learning that industry. And it's liberating. Every time I take on, I still take on, you did this video for me one time about content about pressing down on this grid or whatever, but it's still going to pull in other professional services and things. I still have an ear, nose, and throat practice, and I still have other clients or whatever, but they're never as easy to deal with now as law firms.
We call that marketing continuum, where if you build up density in one area, it naturally begins to pull in opportunities from other areas. You mentioned something there as well, which was interesting, because it's what I wanted to talk to you about, was how you identify problems in their process because you know the industry's process. You mentioned there about paralegals and freeing up time. Hiring was something that obviously you'd been doing before. I remember when you first came in and we were talking through this process, there were a few things that you just felt you couldn't get other people to do or you had struggled with. Why do you think agencies in general or yourself, there are some things where you're like, well, I can get someone else to do that. There's other things as the owners, we're like, no, I have to be the one in charge of that. Why do you think that happens?
The level of responsibility and pressure that I put on myself is that, and this ties in with the hiring and the accountability, I go out to help companies create jobs, right? It's not just sales and leads. I'm actually wanting to help them create jobs so that they get so many leads that they're having to hire for fulfillment. But once that's happening, I feel like it's my responsibility for all of those families now inside of this other company that I'm helping support. It's like a weight on your shoulders. You have to constantly keep producing leads and things like that to keep their revenue on point, but also to keep mouths fed. If you look at it beyond just the leads and the analytics and all that, that the human factor that you're affecting, you're making people's lives better or worse. Taking that into account and having that level of care about your clients, that does make you nervous about handing off to an employee the responsibilities that you've done so well to keep that level of deliverability where it needs to be. Inside the program, you actually outlined a great process for finding someone and vetting them, which helped me free me up tremendously. I was a classic agency owner. Actually, this year, first thing I let go was design and website design. I had been building websites for 20 years. Like when WordPress came out in 2004, I've spoke at WordCamps. Like I've been WordPress all my life. I'm old school. I finally gave that up to somebody else. And that was so freeing. I was like, oh my God, it's a whole new world.
You got a hell of a voice on you, man. That sounded great.
You
can tell you've got kids.
And then though, but this year, the thing that I was really holding on to last though was advertising. When I'm dealing with paid budgets, and things like that, we have SEO and all that on lock. But when it was dealing with AdWords and Bing and Facebook and Nextdoor.com and all these places, I was still doing all that. I'm using ClickUp. I built out some processes in ClickUp. I took your process for hiring a VA. I found an incredible VA. I think she's doing a fantastic job. And it took another layer of responsibility off of me to where I felt comfortable, where I'm getting good feedback from clients and things like that. Until you make that jump, that risk, you take that leap, you don't realize how much you actually are like, what the hell have I been doing? I could have hired this person 2 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, like now I'm selling more. So I'm bringing in business. That's a new website this week. After this call, I've got 2 calls this afternoon. It frees me up to be communications, that queen bee role you can talk about inside the program.
It's really interesting because what I have found is when I start to bring people on, if I've gone through the right process and I've hired the right person, first of all, I go, oh, they're actually better than I am. The quality of the work goes up.
Yeah.
And as you say, it frees up my time to do X, Y, Z. So I'm actually able to find more work. It sort of compounds the output by just getting someone else to take responsibility of that thing that previously I thought no one else would be able to do, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You say it's about responsibility. The weight is on you. The buck stops with you, which it certainly does as the business owner. Let's say that there's something in my business. I'm a new agency. I'm watching this. I know there are things that I need to get other people to do. Either sales and marketing, admin within the business, or operations and delivery. Doesn't matter which one. What do you think some of the steps are that I would need to take as an agency owner to finally get someone else on board to take care of some of that work?
One thing that you preach about that I think is very helpful is creating a stop list. Every time you're doing something, you write on that stop list, I never need to do this shit again. Like, why am I doing this? I hate this. The web design thing, why I hired the web designer was because I had been doing websites for 20 years. I was sick of it. I could do it in my sleep. I'm never doing this again. Once a project is handed off now, I don't handle the majority, especially for website design. I step away now from client communication. My marketing specialist, she handles the communication between clients, the collection of assets, and the communication now with my designer and between her and between the client. I'm out of it now. Identifying that stop list of things you need to stop doing, even if you ain't got revenue, like you ain't got heavy revenue, you're just starting out. You'd be surprised $100 to $400 a week could change your life. Even if you had somebody who could do something for one day a week for you, it will change your life to free you up to do other things. Now, don't go off and waste that time, but definitely free yourself up as early as possible, because it'll help you both mentally and with the growth of your company.
Let's talk about that a bit more, because I agree. I think people try to look for better ways to get through their to-do list. And so when I was taught about the stop list, I was like, oh, this is a complete change. What is that? What are you referring to? What do I do with a stop?
Basically, the way I've always used it, and I have one in ClickUp, is anytime that I find myself answering a question to a client repeatedly, or the advertising, I had written on my stop list that I need to stop doing the advertising. It was on my stop list for a while before I hired my last employee to take that over from me. It's almost like if someone who's doing content marketing, they keep a note file of topics that they may want to talk about someday. I akin it to that. It's like akin to just that. Like you're keeping up a thing of like, I never want to do this shit again. I should not be doing this list, because now these people that I employ full time are counting on me to keep them employed, as long as their performance is good. Now it's my responsibility to continue to grow the family, or not the family, but the revenue. I have a family. That's kind of a Freudian slip right there too. But now I have freed myself up to grow my agency for my family too. It makes me more valuable to my clients because they get to pick my ears sometimes, that sort of thing, and they love it. You know?
They'll do anything. Let's say I'm an agency. I've got my stop list, which are essentially then, if I understand you, tasks that I shouldn't be doing, or I don't want to do, or that don't add value ultimately to the business, right?
Automation, just in general, automation is can be several forms. It could be a human being taking it off your list. It could be a software taking it off your list. It could be a checklist with an existing human being to take it off your list. Automation is not just technology. It can be human resource automation. The stop list is your kind of like 30,000 foot view of your company of what's not automated. Where are you broken in systems inside of your business to be more efficient? It could be from anything from deliverability to sales and marketing to finance and admin. Like it could be in all areas of your business. Another one was bookkeeping. I didn't even mention that one, but now I have a bookkeeping service. I don't do that anymore. That was on my stop list for a while. It's a roadmap to systems building inside of your agency. I don't think you've ever said it that way, but
No,
that's
I
what
don't
it
think I
is to
have.
me.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. You'll see, guys, if I steal it, then you'll know that Charlie can point back to this video and say, well, I think you owe me that phrase, right? So yeah, that's interesting. So I think one of the problems that agency owners have, and this is the point I often try to make, is there's a big difference between someone who builds marketing and someone who runs a marketing agency. They're often worlds apart, business owner or doer. I used to hate doing the funnel building when I ran an agency. I still don't like doing it now for my own business. How do I internally justify that when I go, I don't really like doing this, but I am a marketing agency, so shouldn't I do it? Or it's my agency, surely I should be the one doing the bookkeeping. How do I justify putting that on the stop list? Is it just because I don't like doing it?
Well, always looking for model shift. Your business when you start it is not what it is 5 years down the road. In the beginning, you're charging way too little. You're doing things haphazardly. You're not meeting deadlines. You're scraping and clawing. You're trying to stay above water. That justification comes from just pure, like, I am sick of having this problem repeat and causing this pain, this embarrassment, this failure, all these types of things, all these cuts and bruises you get along the way. Failure is the greatest teacher. At stop list, you start putting things on there like, I suck at this. I don't want to do this anymore. I did not want to do web design anymore. I got to get it off of my plate, but I got to continue to offer it. Now, you could, from your stop list, say, I shouldn't even offer this service anymore.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely.
I should just like axe it all together. Should I spend, X amount of dollars a year on a human resource or a technology or something like that, or an outsourced team of some kind to deal with this, or just get rid of it? I toss and turn with that still, like, about certain things. You've probably seen in the comments in the community about SEO. I think I was asked in a group one time about why I thought SEO was this thing that had to happen. It's not my fault. If I could drop SEO, I probably would. I would still incorporate content marketing into funnels and things like that. But SEO is so preached to the outside world, non-layman, the people who aren't in marketing and understand it, that you can't get away from it. Right? I could stop doing it, but every law firm comes to you and the first thing they want is SEO. It's kind of a double-edged sword because they're already pre-sold. Like, you don't have to sell them on SEO. They're just looking for someone to scratch the itch. But that stop list, God, man, the amount of content we push out is so overwhelming. And it would be a huge shift in manpower and deliverability strength toward other offers. If you didn't have to put so much into creating SEO time. People are going to hate me for saying that.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're going to catch some absolute shit for that. But the reality is it's 100% true.
You and I know in sales, though, the list they already have is where the most money can be made the quickest. Go straight into their list, build out the automation and the communications that they've not done ever with their existing client base, and get as much money out of that, and then go to these other things. But no, that's not how they want to do that. They don't want to do that. We hate those people we've already gotten money from, and they've already handed us money. It's always better to sell to the existing than the new. But you try shifting that conversation with a group of lawyers in a Zoom meeting and see how that goes.
It's that kind of tricky line between what people want and what people need. You can only ever really sell them what they want, even if they need it. The reality is, everyone's kind of doing this. I get emails every day from new authors and book owners and podcast creators. Frankly, they all pretty much have the same thing to say. And I get a bit bored of it. I'm like, actually, I kind of want to just talk to people who are running just businesses. It's just so much more fascinating to me. And I think it's more fascinating to people who watch. So it's not derailing it at all. I'm just glad that you managed to kind of jump on the call. You mentioned something really interesting there that I wanted to kind of allude to when we were talking before we jumped on. You had these plans to change things, and then you found yourself second guessing, and maybe still now, like we all do, and kind of, should I do this? Should I do that? One of the things that you've talked about as being important, regardless of whether it's like our community or literally Seven Figure Freedom, was this idea of an accountability partner, right? Like community of someone to kind of hold your feet to the fire. I still have one on a Friday. I still have an accountability group. And again, agency owners have a habit of, even if they have a group of people, they're still quite insular, lonely people. why has having someone else on that journey with you been so important or powerful?
Before the call, I mentioned that I was already in the mindset that I was looking for a group of people who would put skin in the game in something. We all pay a monthly fee to be part of your group. I wanted that because I can go to any Facebook group and it's like that kind of, I'm up here on this top of the mountain and they're all still down here, and you can't really make really good connections with where they are. I wanted to be with more people that were up in this range with me so that I could get some now problems that I have. I read your book while I was on vacation. I signed up, and for a while it was great just communicating inside of the group. But I think we had like one of your weekly calls, and I believe it was Kate or somebody like Kate had brought up accountability partners or something. It was just brought up randomly. Sheila Hurd, who I think you've interviewed on here, we were both kind of in that mindset of needing that granularity. It's so different when you actually sit one-to-one across from somebody trying to do exactly what you're doing. There's no threat. We're not in the same market or anything like that. And to just help them and they help you. Sheila and I call it, our meeting is called Guardrails. Sometimes in the group, we'll post a picture of guardrails. We are guardrails for each other to not chase the shiny objects.
That's cool.
Right. So we do this sometimes. Stay right here. Stop looking at the shiny objects. Oh, Charlie, like I work with ear, nose, and throat practices. I work with some of these other professional service providers. I just want my website to be professional service providers. No, Charlie, 90% of your clients are law firms. You know, law firms up and down. Charlie, shut the F up. Law firms. That's what Sheila will tell me. Because every now and then I'm like, oh, this huge company just contacted me and they're not a law firm. It's like those big cat eyes in the cartoons, like, you know, like, and she'll keep me on point. Now, there's a lot of her in particular, she's had a lot of transition, changing her agency and things like that. Helping her going through that transition, it gives me joy too. The accountability is not just helping you stay on focus, but it's the joy of helping another person in their life. I've actually become friends with her husband now. I call him Bumblebee. Hope he does well. He's under the weather right now, but I call him Bumblebee. He comes on the Zoom every now and then. It's not like you can't find them outside this group, but it's this person had in the beginning has skin in the game, was serious, not playing agency.
That's such a good point. It's one of the kind of, I guess, qualifiers we have where we're like, we don't want this to be people who are starting up. We want it to be people who are running businesses because they're worlds apart.
They are. And I could go on and on about the amount of content. I just never knew. I didn't come from the agency world before building my agency. I just never knew the amount of things I run across that I can't even believe that this person was working as an agency when I got this. I handed this pile of excrement. Like, what was this? You could just see there was no process. There was no accountability. I love helping people and I will help anybody. But when you're going to put money into something, you want it to be with people that are going to take it seriously. That was the main thing. I think that's true for most all community groups that you decide to pay for.
There's kind of the old adage that a free product is worth every penny. I will gladly pay to get access to a network of people. In my opinion, it's the fastest method of growing is to pay to get access to a network of people who are above where I want to get to.
A jump start.
And it's the fastest methodology. It sounds counterintuitive because you're like, well, I'm spending money I don't have to be around people who are above me. But that's a really fast way. But it's also, as you say, when you start paying for something, you're like, I want to get every cent out of this. I'm going to join the calls, do the work, put the time in. And as you say, you end up making some really deep connections with people. I still have a call on Friday for the exact same thing that we've paid for years and years and years ago.
You won't necessarily agree with everything.
Oh, 100%.
It's like any book you read. You're going to take a few nuggets and apply them. But the trick there is to apply what you learn. If you're sitting there in this group and they tell you to try something and you never try it, and then you're like, oh, it don't work, well, that shit's on you. I do see a lot of the times with people asking these questions. And my first question is, did you try it? What did the market say? I'm sorry. You're going to have to invest some fucking money or some time, buddy. I'm sorry. That's just the world. Poo-poo. If you got a staff, put it on them to try it.
That's like trying to second guess the market. I see people are trying to jump the step, and I want to try and make sure that I make as few mistakes along the way. I've posted this in another group that I was kicked out of because I posted. I said, I don't value feedback. The reason I don't value feedback is because you're telling me your opinion. Whereas if I put it out to the market and it gets more or less clicks, it's irrelevant of whether you're right. It's based on actual evidence that I've seen has worked, and that's what I will use to make a decision going forward.
I run across so many people who, and this turns back into the SEO thing a little bit, but nobody wants to pay for a click. They do not want to pay for a click. Even if you don't want your long-term strategy to incorporate pay per click, you still can use it to vet out certain things for short 6-week runs and things like that, just to see if a message resonates on different platforms and see if it works. And if it doesn't work, don't spend another dime, on that thing. Then you take that and put it into other strategies, into your content, like what words work, put those words in your SEO, things like that. Like there's a lot of fear with that testing part. But if you don't test, that's all marketing and advertising is. It's a fucking test. Every time you put something out there, it's a test. Like, and your agency aren't going to come. I tell the law firms, everything we do is a test. You want to sell more estate plans? Great. We're going to try this on AdWords. We're going to try this on Bing. We're going to try this on nextdoor.com. We're going to try this on Facebook. And we're going to try this message. We're going to do A/B testing, and we're going to see what ponies win the race. Whatever works, we continue to do that, and we put more horses against it in the race. Then it's the same thing with the content. We look at the data. What's winning the races? Do more of that. It's always testing. You see people that are new to agency life or trying to grow a business, and fear engulfs them. I have my own fears myself. It keeps people from actually growing their company because they don't test anything out. They can't put any scratch in the game to figure out whether something's going to work, and so they sit still. This is something crazy right here. Out of all the freaking people to get advice from, this is the last person I would have ever thought I'd get a nugget from. But Mike Tyson, I saw a video of him saying some shit, and I thought, like, man, this dude knows what he's talking about. He got hit in the head so many times, but he knows. He basically fears like fire. If you don't control it, it gets out of control and it burns everything up around you. But he said, but if you can control the fire, it can cook meals for you. It can keep you warm and all that. Using that fear of whether what's going to work or not, and putting it out there and getting that negative or that positive response, using it to get that, that feedback from the real market is way more valuable than some shit coming from a group. In the terms of business, as far as my accountability to the other business owners, my agency support, I don't give a shit about what I say. Way care about what I do and what I can produce, but I keep it tight to vest.
What I found as well is agency owners, not in particular, I think all business owners do this, but agency owners do it as well, is they like to change stuff for whatever reason because they get bored. Or they hear feedback of people saying, oh, you really shouldn't sell ads anymore. You really shouldn't sell WordPress sites anymore. I'm like, you're literally listening to most 2 data points, yourself and someone else.
Nothing is dead until you kill it.
100%. Exactly.
You got to kill it. All this such and such is dead. Email marketing, like one guy in a group, I can't remember his name, that does the email or whatever. If he heard someone say email is dead on Twitter, I assure you he would swarm their ass. But I'm just saying, it is not dead until your company kills it. Exactly. SEO is not dead until you give it 2 years. If it doesn't work for you over 2 years, abandon it. People are crazy.
I know, people are crazy. This is why I kind of wanted to get you on, because whenever we're on calls and stuff, what sound like radical ideas, but are actually just really simple, common sense thinking things through. What do you think is stopping agency owners from getting to the level that they want to be then? Why are so many of them stuck selling things that don't work, or testing the same thing over and over again, or listening to feedback from other people? What's that all about?
I think that they hold themselves back. I, to a certain extent, have held myself back. Fear of success. What is it? Just fear of putting content out there. What is that fear? I can't remember it.
As being judged?
Like just fear in general. I think people, instead of doing work, they listen to too many podcasts and too many sources. They don't identify like a source of information, a single truth that you believe in, and follow that for a while. If it's not working, then pivot. But stop letting so many influences out there come into your head. Imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is what I was thinking of. You got to stop letting so many influences come in, because it muddies the water of action of like the things that you want to try and accomplish and do. There are people in your space, Mike, that you can listen to that say completely different things. There are people higher and lower than you that from their books and all that will say different things. You could go out and find like Grant Cardone or somebody like that, Gary Vaynerchuk or somebody, and you can go in gazillion different directions. Pick a source. I actually think that it's not just about your community and you. It's the people that are in it too with you, and second guessing you too, that back and forth to hold you, that sort of thing. I have sometimes not agreed on some sales things and all, but it's that back and forth that you get with somebody to say, and then you will throw out some questions to make someone think about what they're actually saying. It's those types of things that people need to focus on and not spread themselves across 20 Facebook groups, 200 online courses, and all that type of stuff. Pick your pony in the race that you want to align with, that you think that person has the model that I need to be working with, and go that route. Here in the United States, there's a lot of popular marketing guru type people or whatever. But when I read your book, I actually saw patterns of writing a sales letter first and things like this that I was like, okay, this guy, we're not the same, but there are things that I'm doing and I'm resonating with here. It didn't matter that you were across the pond from me. I had never heard of you before. It didn't matter about that. It was because I was aligned with how you did business. I think that's really it. You got to pick your community, get some good
hiring,
information.
I think. Like
yes.
People often hire based on like CVs and skills and experience and stuff they bring. But actually, what I have found is that the staff members I get on with the most and who do the best work are the ones that I align with value-wise. I'm like, I kind of just want to hear what they have to say because they align with my deeper beliefs. We can train skills and stuff, but realistically, do I want to listen to this person?
That is why I'm in your community, because we can do all the marketing and everything in the world. But if you have no ability to sell something like in person, I don't care what you can produce content-wise, you still either via video, Zoom calls, things like that. That's even since the pandemic is a point worth noting. Sales became even more your skills, your interpersonal skills, or soft skills. It comes naturally to some folks and then not naturally to others, but because you can't actually sit in a room with people and feel them out and go off of their vibe and their responses and understand their emotions. Like when you're doing a talk in front of real people, it's a lot better. It's easier than doing it over Zoom. It's the same thing with sales. It's become more difficult because it's more remote. It makes it even more important to understand sales, because marketing is not going to shield you from the ability to navigate a big deal. You talk about $25,000 funnels. You think someone's going to just hand you $25,000 without a conversation? You're smoking something there.
This is what you and I have kind of connected with. Marketing can only accelerate what your sales process is already really good at. Same with advertising. People are like, oh, admittedly, I believe in testing 100%, but you can only scale what's working. If you take that exact model, if you just throw a ton of money at something and you don't know that it's going to work, you're just throwing money at it.
Little bites out of the elephant, man. Don't throw tons and tons out there.
Dude, this has been so good. I've really enjoyed talking with you, and thank you so much for coming on. First of all, what do you think the next steps are for funnel businesses in a kind of a summary, 1, 2, 3 summary?
I think that for one, stop selling it as a funnel. Don't call it a funnel. That's first of all, don't do that. I think the second thing is to charge the right prices. That's one of the first things that all young agencies, that's the biggest mistake, because if you're not charging correctly, you can't hire people to free yourself up to make more sales. Don't be afraid of that. And 3, eat your own dog food. Be a client to your service as early on as possible. Build that email list. Do those things that you're going to go out there and preach about. Now, I can say this with absolute honesty here, that me eating my own dog food is just as hard as it is for me saying it to other people to do it. I understand that that's a difficult thing, and that's where imposter syndrome comes in too. But those are kind of the 3 things. Charge more. Your offer essentially should not be marketing funnels. Your offer needs to be really good. Charge more money, and then eat your own dog food. Treat your business as a client. Those are kind of the 3 big things, I think.
Awesome, man. Dude, how can people reach out to you if they want to know more?
The only social platform that I ever even look at is Twitter. I'm at /Charlie Harper. So someone could connect with me there. My agency is whooshagency.com, WHOOSH.
Thank you so much. Massively appreciate you being on board with us here, and I'll catch up in a bit, man.